Today is also World Happiness Day. Did anybody see that coverage this morning? I used to be at an organization where we were part of the research behind World Happiness Day. And so what happens is on World Happiness Day, all of the media look at it and rank where they're based and where their countries stand, right? And whether the US has fallen from being in the top 20 to number 23, as it was this morning, and whether Finland is still number 1, as it always is, and all the Scandinavian countries are as well. But it's not really about the rankings, right? It's about thinking about what are those core elements of social well-being and community and connection. Health and wealth absolutely contributes to happiness, but we also know that trust, friendship, neighborhoods where you feel safe, someone you can call when you need help. These are all of the leading indicators of what really drives happiness for humans and for their communities. And so when I think about the philanthropic sector, I feel as if you are all very much on the front lines of thinking about what does the system need? What are those issues about building connection across communities and across society? And of course, today, we have the opportunity to think about that through the lens of artificial intelligence, which is the work that we do at PAI. And I often say that almost anything you see in the news about AI tells us much more about humans than it necessarily tells us about the technology. And this is the work that we focus on right from all the way from fairness and transparency and accountability through to AI's impact on workers and worker well-being. We do a lot of work you're going to hear about later today in media integrity. This is really all of the concern this year around AI and elections and the misinformation and what do we need to be doing to make sure that people can find trusted sources of reliable and timely and relevant information at the most critical moment, which is when they are going to vote. So those are some of the things we're going to talk about today. They really are examples of the work that we're doing at PAI. And you all, of course, know about generative AI, and that's a piece of our work too. We released guidance last year to really think about what does safety and responsibility look like all the way from the very early stages of research and development in these systems to when they actually deployed in very, very different use cases. So we're going to grapple with all of this today, and we're really looking forward to it. We want these days to be both an opportunity for connection and community building, but also to start to dig into some of those substantive issues as well. So very happy to welcome you all to our very first AI and Philanthropy Forum.
Thank you, and we'll do the same again. I'll begin with Rebecca.
Thank you, Secretary, and it's a pleasure to be here. I want to assure you that we were the hardest working roundtable of the day. We went long, and I also need to apologize to the participants in the roundtable. I suppose that's appropriate as a Canadian. We had detailed policy proposals in almost every intervention that was made, and I will not be able to go into them, but there was just such substance. It was a super conversation, and I thank everyone who was around the table. And that really shows that we began with speaking to a number of leaders from government who made it very clear that artificial intelligence and attending to the guardrails as well as the capacities for innovation were core to their mandates, and there were a number of initiatives underway. I also thought it was very thoughtful that the leaders were clear about their need to build their own capacity within government, acknowledging that government can move more slowly sometimes than technology and innovation, but really thinking about how to build capacity. And this summit came up as a great example of ways in which leaders can come together, learn from each other. We talked about developing shared resources, shared ways to share what's working, what's not working, using different international conversations such as standards and the focus on interoperability, thinking about ways in which science can be done more openly, where research can be supported to really build capacity within government. That would be my first takeaway from the conversation. The second was really a clear consensus that regulation and innovation go hand in hand, that these are not two ends of the spectrum and binary choices, but rather in this moment, we need both. And that regulation can in fact drive innovation and vice versa. And we heard a number of different regulatory proposals, from product safety laws to liability approaches, through to things like sandboxing and building capacity moving forward. And then the third point we heard is that we really need to go beyond this notion of artificial intelligence as being one single entity that policymakers need to respond to. But in this moment, as we move from foundation through to frontier models, we need to go the next level down and dig deeper into capabilities, domains, approaches for release, and really understand what both the potential and the risks and the harms are across the life cycle of these different models and different approaches. And there were a number of proposals here. One of them was very specific around the way in which the safety institutes could be used to do some very specific work to inform regulation and action moving forward. And then finally, the last point, and I'm not just saying this because I believe in multi-stakeholderism, but there was a lot of belief in the importance of creating multi-stakeholder communities of action, and particularly because of the trust that governments have with regard to their citizens, and attending to education and skills development and literacy and closing that digital divide so that citizens can feel both protected and also enabled and inspired to innovate and to harness this potential for all. Thank you very much. So it's February 1975, and a group of about 140, mostly men, come together in a rustic center on the Monterey coast in California, also known as Asilomar. They were mostly leading scientists in molecular biology, but they also included a few lawyers, a few social scientists, and a few journalists. And at the end of the conference, they delivered a set of recommendations to the National Institutes of Health in the US, including a voluntary moratorium on certain types of research. And on the very first day following the conference, I know many of you in the AI community are thinking, if only, the NIH set in motion the development of very clear guidelines for research and research funding that were officially published only a year later. And this kicked off a decades-long commitment that became international around voluntary self-regulation, including clear standards with regard to laboratory operations. And just last month, in the 50th anniversary of that session, I had the honor of joining a Science magazine panel at the AAAI conference to really reflect on the contributions of Asilomar to the broader scientific community, and including, of course, AI.